With the Age of War Chapter 1, some big changes are coming to the combat system. One of those major changes is coming to how AI respond to the player character and how they engage with combat. Today we'll be looking into the changes to AI and seeing how they perform. If you find this information helpful, leave a like, it helps the video out. So the changes to enemy AI come along with changes to enemy damage and health. Enemies will deal more damage with their attacks, but they'll also have less health across the board. In a 1v1 or a 2v1, that's fine, but if you're getting swarmed by 15 guys at New Asagarth, it doesn't really matter if they have less health when you're being constantly smacked from all angles. Therefore, to fix that, Funcom have implemented 3 new adjustments. The first is that enemies, both human and animal, have had their senses reduced. This means their sight and hearing radius is smaller, and thus they won't respond to seeing you from 30 feet away, nor will they hear their friends cry for help from the same distance. I've seen some people say that the enemies feel a bit dumb as a result, as they don't react to you as easy, but personally, I don't mind. I think it feels a lot better than having the entire settlement descend on you as soon as you breathe within their aggro area. As you can see in the background footage, enemies are not being pulled from across the village, but instead they become aggressive in smaller packs when I get fairly close. This is designed to stop instances of swarming. The most obvious example the devs came up with, which I've already given, is New Asagarth. It was very easy to accidentally attract a crowd here, and whilst it was sometimes fun to swing your great hammer into the crowd and watch it hit everyone, it wasn't as fun to get smacked constantly with no counterplay. The second change is for a similar issue. Even with the sense changes, it's still possible to encounter groups of enemies consisting of 4, 5, 6 or even more. To tackle this, or for troublesome fights that you're struggling to win, it's now even easier to run away from fights. Funcom have updated leeching rules for enemies, which makes them far less willing to chase you, and it even seems some enemies will break off from combat in groups if they're not able to find a good opening to attack you from. There's nothing wrong with running away from a fight if you know you're probably not going to win it, and by having the enemies break off sooner, it offers you a chance to reassess and reevaluate your approach to the situation. The third change is a quiet one, as it removes the internal stun lock tolerance enemies have. Before being told, I wasn't certain that this mechanic actually existed, but prior to the Age of War, enemies would have a certain amount of stun lock attacks they could take until they became briefly immune to them, which allowed them to fire off an attack of their own. This has been completely removed, so if you are fighting a bunch of enemies, you can buy yourself some breathing space by hitting the crowd with a stun lock attack or two, without worrying about them being tolerant to the stun. This will also function in 1v1 combat with mini-bosses and bosses too. That being said, enemies will still have hyper armor on some attacks, making them immune to stuns, and the removal of this tolerance mechanic can't really be abused that easily considering the higher stamina cost of using your weapon. In my overall impressions of these changes, I like them. It was fun to get chased by the entirety of New Asagarth whilst playing around in creative mode, but when you're actually playing survival, getting constantly smashed by 10 angry Nordheimers was not the vibe. Even if you tried to escape, there's a good chance you take a whole load of damage, and it was just a very easy way to die if you were unprepared. It now feels like there's a lot more choice and agency when it comes to approaching areas full of aggressive NPCs, and by being able to meticulously pick through the camp, I think it adds a lot of intelligent choices you can make, so you don't get overwhelmed unless you want to. You can still attract a fair crowd of enemies even with the nerf to senses, but doing so is mostly your choice, and choice is always a good thing to have. Thank you for watching, and of course a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. What do you think of the changes to AI? I know some people would have enjoyed the challenge of getting mobbed, but with enemies dealing more damage and stamina becoming more of a consideration in combat, I quite like this change. Again, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.